Have you ever felt like you're up against something too big to overcome? Like the odds are stacked against you, and victory seems impossible? Well, you're not alone. Today, we're diving into one of the most famous stories in the Bible that shows us how faith can defeat even the greatest giants in our lives. This is the story of David and Goliath, a tale that has inspired generations, and trust me, you'll want to stick around for this. Imagine being a young shepherd standing alone, facing a giant warrior armed to the teeth. No one thinks you can win, except for you and your faith. Let's see how David's courage turned the impossible into the possible. But before we jump in, I have a question for you. What's the giant in your life right now? That challenge you feel is impossible to overcome? Drop it in the comments below, because by the end of this video, you'll not only learn how David conquered Goliath, you'll know how you can conquer your own giants too. Now let's set the stage. We're in the valley of Elah, where two armies stand on opposite sides. The Israelites were on one side, and their enemies, the Philistines, were on the other. For 40 days, a giant named Goliath has taunted the Israelites, daring anyone to challenge him in one-on-one combat. Goliath stands over 9 feet tall, clad in armor, with a spear the size of a weaver's beam. No one dares to step forward until a young shepherd named David shows up. David was the youngest of 8 brothers, a simple shepherd from Bethlehem. He wasn't a soldier, he wasn't trained in combat. He was just bringing food to his brothers who were fighting in King Saul's army. But when David heard Goliath's taunts, something stirred inside of him. Then a champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span. He stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? And are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me." 1 Samuel 17:4-8 NIV. For 40 days, Goliath mocked the Israelites, calling them cowards. The entire army was paralyzed by fear. They had no answer to this giant until David came onto the scene. He couldn't stand hearing his people mocked, and more importantly, he couldn't stand hearing his God mocked. Now imagine this. A young, unarmed shepherd stepping up to the king, asking to take on a giant. It sounds absurd, right? But David had something no one else in that army had. Faith. Faith that his God would deliver him from this impossible situation. David said to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." Saul replied, "You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." 1 Samuel 17:32-33 NIV. But David wasn't discouraged. He remembered the times God had helped him defeat lions and bears while guarding his sheep. He knew that if God could help him then, he could help him now. Picture this moment, a young boy walking onto the battlefield with nothing but a sling and stones, facing a fully armored giant. The soldiers watching must have thought it was a death wish. David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." 1 Samuel 17:45 NIV. This wasn't just about David versus Goliath. This was about faith versus fear, God's strength versus human might. David knew that the battle belonged to the Lord. In a single moment, everything changed. David slung his stone, and it struck Goliath on the forehead. The giant fell to the ground, dead. The impossible had just happened. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. 1 Samuel 17:50 NIV. David's victory wasn't just about physical strength. It was about faith. It was about believing that no matter how big the obstacle, God can give us the victory. So what's the takeaway from this story? We all face giants, maybe not a literal 9-foot warrior, but giants like fear, doubt, financial troubles, illness, or personal struggles. And just like David, we can face them with faith. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Psalm 27:1 NIV. David's story shows us that no matter how impossible something seems, with God on our side, we can face any challenge. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, remember, you don't face your giants alone. With faith, anything is possible. I hope David's story has inspired you as much as it inspires me. Whatever giant you're facing, know that God's strength is greater. Now, if you found this message helpful, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need encouragement today. And don't forget, drop your giants in the comments below. We'll be praying with you. Remember, faith doesn't make things easy, but it makes them possible. Let's take on our giants together. Stay strong, stay faithful, and I'll see you in the next video. For the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. 1 Samuel 17:47, NIV.